Reeducated to destruction. When political leaders in the United States begin to speak of re-educating their opponents, the echoes of authoritarian regimes grow too loud to ignore. In history, that phrase has always preceded cultural coercion, ideological conformity, and the silencing of dissent. What was once the language of Marxist revolutionaries has crept into American political discourse clothed in modern rhetoric about unity, truth, and progress. In the 20th century, re-education meant something dark. From Stalin's Soviet Union to Mao's China, the idea was simple: those who resist the ideology of the state must be broken down, retrained, and rebuilt to serve it. The process was called enlightenment by its architects, but it was destruction of the mind and spirit in truth. When similar language appears in our own republic, it cannot be brushed off as a mere figure of speech. It reveals a shift from persuasion toward punishment, from debate to dogma. Since the mid-2010s, that very rhetoric has been used by several prominent figures on the American left. Hillary Clinton, in a 2023 interview, described supporters of Donald Trump as members of a cult and remarked, "At some point maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members." Though she avoided the word re-education, the sentiment is unmistakably parallel the belief that political dissenters require corrective mental conditioning. David Atkins, a member of the Democratic National Committee, took to social media after the 2020 election asking, "No, seriously, how do you deprogram 75 million people? Where do you start? Fox? Facebook? We have to start thinking in terms of post-World War II Germany or Japan." The comparison he invoked nations that underwent enforced ideological reconstruction reveals the extent to which this thinking has entered modern partisan rhetoric. Kyle Jurek, a field organizer for Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign, was recorded saying, "Germany had to spend billions of dollars re-educating their expletive people. We're probably going to have to do the same expletive thing here." This is no misstatement, it was a direct invocation of re-education as political necessity. Paula Collins, a Democratic congressional candidate in 2024, went further, asserting during a virtual event that Trump supporters need to be sent to a re-education camp after the election to get their minds right. The phrase could have been lifted from Mao's Red Guard or Lenin's Commissars. Each of these statements might have been dismissed as rhetorical excess had they been isolated incidents. Yet they form a pattern, an ideological chorus insisting that millions of Americans must be mentally corrected for holding unfashionable political views. This is precisely how totalitarian systems begin, with the conviction that only one way of thinking should be permitted. Parallel to this rhetoric has risen critical race theory, CRT, an academic offshoot of Marxist critical theory. Its fundamental assumption is that society is not a network of individuals governed by law, but a structure of oppressors and oppressed, defined by race and identity. This worldview, transplanted into American schools, trains children to view their nation as irredeemably tainted, their history as shameful, and their liberty as conditional upon group identity. It is not civic education, it is moral reprogramming. Scholars at the Heritage Foundation and the Mises Institute have documented CRT's origin in neo-Marxist ideology. Its techniques, anti-bias trainings, privilege confessions, allyship pledges, mirror psychological conditioning. Students are taught not to debate ideas but to recite approved moral stances, a process indistinguishable from ideological re-education. From a founding father, construction-loving perspective, this development is especially alarming. The tradition values self-government, local control, and individual conscience. Re-education, by contrast, represents the surrender of all three. 1. Erosion of individualism. When citizens are told that moral worth derives from group identity, individuality is lost. The states' rights principle that governance is closest to the people and grounded in personal responsibility cannot coexist with collectivist ideology. 2. Revision of national memory. The re-education of youth begins by rewriting history. To convince a nation that its foundations are evil is to strip it of unity and will. Students who are taught to despise their own forebears cannot preserve the liberty those forebears secured. 3. Suppression of dissent. When disagreement is diagnosed as hate, privilege, or radicalization, the door to reasoned discourse closes. Re-education regimes always begin with moral superiority and end with censorship. The United States now stands at a crossroads between constitutional liberty and ideological uniformity. The call to re-educate political opponents is no longer satire, it is spoken aloud by national figures. If allowed to grow unchecked, this mentality will erode the Republic's foundations: freedom of conscience, diversity of thought, and local self-governance. History teaches what happens next. First, language is redefined, then memory rewritten, and finally, opposition criminalized. The same sequence that destroyed the individuality of nations under Marxist rule could, through apathy, repeat itself. To resist this cultural captivity, Americans, particularly those in states that still prize independence, must reaffirm a few vital truths. Education must teach how to think, not what to think. Historical study must preserve facts, not manipulate them for ideology. State and local authority over schools must be defended against centralization of dogma. Free citizens must never apologize for loving their country, their faith, or their heritage. The spirit of liberty has endured hardship, war, before. It can again if it remembers that true education is enlightenment, but re-education is enslavement. Re-educated to destruction is not a metaphor. It is the path upon which nations destroy themselves while believing they are improving mankind. Every time an American politician demands the mental correction of their opponents, the ghost of Marx nods approvingly. Liberty cannot survive such arrogance. The Republic must choose the open mind of a free people or the closed system of ideological obedience. For once a people consents to be re-educated, they have already forgotten what freedom means.